Hello and welcome to Global News Factory. So, here is the latest episode in Europe's ongoing geopolitical reality show. A Russian oil tanker, part of what is now being called a shadow fleet, was cruising through the Baltic Sea, minding its own business. Estonia, not thrilled about the tanker passing by, decided to intervene. And then Russia, never one to miss a dramatic entrance, sent in a fighter jet. Translation: do not touch our oily business or we will touch your airspace. The tanker in question is the Jaguar. It had just been placed on UK's sanctions list. But Russia, of course, does not care, and when it was passing by near Estonia's waters, the oil tanker, Estonia said, "Stop!" Jaguar said, "Nope." And then Russia said, "Here is an Su-35 fighter jet for your troubles." And that is when things got spicy. Estonia claims the Russian fighter jet entered NATO's airspace for about a minute, just long enough to make a point, but short enough to call it accidental. The plane buzzed around the Jaguar, likely making it feel very important, and then escorted the tanker back into Russian waters. Let's be clear here. This is not about Russia's aggression or show of force, but a befitting reply to insignificant small NATO countries that keep poking their nose in Russia's oil business with China and India. Russia is using its own vessels, tankers, to ship its own oil to a third country. The question is, how can a NATO nation be troubled by this? The fact that Estonia tried to stop the tanker from passing by shows how arrogant these NATO countries are. By storming a fighter jet right into NATO's airspace, Russia has made one thing clear: these tankers do not need Western certification. They do not need NATO's permission. Let's move on. See this headline: EU backs 17th round of Russia sanctions. Focus on the word 17th. That's the number that should be making headlines. Because the European Union has just unveiled its 17th package of sanctions against Russia. That's right, 17. A number so stubborn, so defiant of logic, it feels like it's been chosen by a committee that has lost both its grip on reality and its calculator. Let me ask you this: if you tried something 16 times and it failed every single time, would you do it a 17th time? And not just regular failure, we're talking about biblical, Red Sea parting, Tower of Babel collapse kind of failure. Now, sanctions that were meant to cripple Russia's economy, but instead tripped up Europe's own industries, caused energy prices to skyrocket, and introduced a new breed of inflation that's now squatting in your grocery bills like an unwanted roommate. So naturally, what does the EU do? They double down. They say, this next one, this will work. And before the ink even dried on the 17th package, chatter around the 18th package has already begun. That's not a foreign policy, it's a Netflix series actually. It's a Netflix series that should have been cancelled after season 2, but now we're entering season 18th. In the real world, if you run a business and make the same catastrophic mistake 17 times in a row, you don't get an 18th chance. You get bankruptcy, a lawsuit. But in the EU, it's business as usual because the people making these mistakes are not the ones paying for them. That's your job, EU citizens. You pick up the tab. And now we move on to Bloomberg. Bloomberg reports that the EU is actively looking for ways to circumvent Hungary's veto on Ukraine's accession. Let that sink in. The EU has rules, its own rules, that require unanimous consent from all member states to move forward on such matters. And Hungary said no, but the EU is thinking, how can we work around that no? Suddenly, the word unanimous does not mean everyone anymore, it means everyone we like. I mean, what's the point of having a rule book if you are just going to rip it up the moment it gets in your way? The EU itself wrote its own legal framework and now wants to break it. Now we have an EU which talks big about democracy, but the moment it wants something inconvenient, boom, the rules become suggestions. And if someone asks about accountability, now that's really against our policy. At this point, it feels like Brussels has become a graveyard of common sense, logic, and sanity. Now, see this. The EU Energy Commissioner recently vowed that the bloc would not import a single molecule of Russian gas. Not one. Not even an accidental whiff. Because the EU would not be blackmailed by energy. Fantastic! Except most EU citizens, especially the ones trying to run businesses, are not looking for a moral crusade. They are looking for cheaper gas, affordable energy. The same energy they were promised when they built those businesses in the first place. Back when natural gas did not require a second mortgage. Imagine planning your bakery, your factory, your farm based on energy prices maybe 5 years back, and then waking up in a world where the same product is 4 times the cost because someone in Brussels decided this is how we save the world. So here is the real lesson. When your plan fails, the EU does not stop, reflect, or reassess. It doubles down, then triples, then 17ples. Because if you cannot succeed, at least fail spectacularly and make someone else pay the price. The EU tries to flex its muscles, but what it keeps attracting is inflation, international ridicule, energy insecurity, and a total loss of trust, not just from its own citizens but from the world, watching this bureaucratic clown show unravel in real time. 17 rounds in, it is not a strength that they are projecting right now, it is desperation, dressed up in diplomacy, sold as solidarity. But to average citizen, it is just expensive nonsense packaged in gaslight and wrapped with a blue and gold bow. Thanks for staying with me. You're watching Global News Factory.